Wee wee. She's ticking along. That's where we're going. Top of that bad boy. 66 kilometres. Barranduda. Now Barranduda, you are a bee sting. Both poles engaged. Wee wee. Not far off the top of Mount Barranduda. Very proud to say that we've tickled over 25k.
25k.
Keep it coming, baby. Just about to do the interview with Cowboy, so I'll see you soon. Hooroo. So I'm here with Glenn, Cowboy Gary. We're at the top of Trig Point Track, Ridge Lane, and what's the other one?
I don't know, Ridge Lane and Trig Point. It's an intersection.
There's 3 roads, bro.
Yeah, but that's Ridge Lane going all the way up there in Trig Point. So it's 2 roads.
Hey, so just got to the top. Taking my sweet time.
How long have you been going for now?
Nearly 12 hours.
That's a massive effort. Absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, she's
How many kilometres?
she's struggle street now, 72.
Yeah. You're in the hard yards now.
Proper. Just run out of puff.
You're in the point of the run now where it's nothing to do with physical fitness. This is all about grit. This is all about sand now. Like you can help manage it through things like nutrition and water and that kind of stuff. But this is like Goggins territory now. I've commented to a few of the guys here, like I joined the army back in 2003, and when I came down here to the trade school, we didn't have seniors of your caliber doing this kind of stuff. I think it's so phenomenal, like as a veteran, to see all these young guys who are in the start of their career who are out here on a weekend. They're not out partying, they're not out causing havoc. They're out here, and it's such an awesome community that you've put together. I think it's absolutely phenomenal, mate. Well done.
Pretty rap, bro. We've got a mixture of staff and trainees and whatnot, and we've got runners, we've got crew, we've got people just volunteering their time to just seeing what's going on, and they're all over there, and
the energy throughout this crowd is absolutely phenomenal. And what this is doing for these young members of the ADF to see what you're doing now to set the standard, so when they move up through the ranks, they're going to be like, oh yeah, I remember when Jesse did that 112 kilometre event. When they were private or a crafty or whatever.
It's funny that you say that because you don't know this, but I looked at you that way. No shit, bro.
Yeah, right.
So my first memory of you, now we'll get into the interview. So I first met Cowboy by name and by reputation. I was in Afghanistan in 2011.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you were on the either prior or maybe 2 or 3 prior.
Yeah. So that was my second trip. So yeah, I was there in 2008, and then I was also there in 2010 through into 2011. Yeah.
Yeah. So I seen your name on the wall that many times that I thought that this fitter with a nickname Cowboy has got to be worth knowing.
I was a fitter armourer, and I specialise. Essentially, my whole goal in the army was, from a young guy, was I wanted to get posted to special forces units, and I found out that the fitters and the vehicle mechanics could also get specialised into marine engineering, and so essentially fixing boats. And that's essentially where I just poured my heart and soul into that. And it was through doing that job that I picked up a bunch of specialist qualifications that were really unique, especially for Ramey, in the parachuting and the military freefall quals. And yeah, like my little claim to fame for a little while there, like I was the only military freefaller in Ramey, like in the entire corps. We know from the caliber of the individuals in Ramey, you get a good Ramey soldier, like they can do almost anything because of the technical know-how that they have that's intrinsic to them to be able to like pass the test of just to get in to do the job, to do the training. Those men and women, realistically, like there's a large cohort of them who are just absolutely phenomenal. And I wanted to be as far forward as possible. Like I wanted to be as close to the front line as I possibly could get myself. And the best way I realised I could do that was through technical excellence. Be the best you can at the job, because especially the shooters, like the special forces guys, like they are absolute animals in the way that they're constantly assessing each other, and that also passes on to the Ramey guys.
Yeah. Well, man, to see the way that you find something that you're passionate about and you can apply yourself in that regard. I'm going to use that as a segue to talk about what you're up to now. So, your give us a brief overview of what your service was, and then give us some insight as to what you do now.
Yeah, right. So I was in the army for the best part of 2 decades, and I was a sergeant when I was at the end there. When I and ended up getting medically discharged just because of the toll that the job does on the body. I realised the writing was on the wall for me. Like the injuries that I had weren't getting any better through my treatment, and I went, okay, I need to start getting some injury recognition going on. I need to start engaging with DVA to get my injuries approved. And I was haphazardly into the process because I just had no experience with it. And this was a fork in my life actually. It was the day before one of my medical assessments. And one of the tradies that we had, Troy, one of the fitters, he poked his head into the office and said, "Oh, hey, Sarge, I heard you got your appointment tomorrow. Have you gone through this policy and these documents?" And I had no idea what he was talking about. And he went through them with me. And it was that moment I realised I inadvertently would have stuffed myself up because I didn't understand.
Yeah.
I didn't have the depth of knowledge. And so from then onwards, I was just absolute militant about my guys that we would make sure that, one, they've been to the med centres to make sure that their injuries were documented, and then two, getting them through the process to make it as smooth as possible. And so now I run a business, which is there if you can see it.
Yep.
It's called Sarge's Advocacy, and I do injury claims for veterans, and I do it on a commission basis. So essentially, I charge 5% plus GST of the claim outcome, so there's no cost to the veteran until they get their outcome, and I'm financially incentivized to maximise the return that they get. And I can never promise an outcome for a veteran, but I can promise that no one will fight harder than what we do.
Mate, and I'm learning that now. And the timeline for how this has come about, when I realised that this run was going to take place, and then I wanted to tie it in with those key landmarks, and I was going to interview people.
Yeah.
Between you, Will, Shane, there were people that I wanted to have experienced something with a different story to tell, and it wasn't until then that I realised that you were. I knew you were a DVA advocate, but then I thought, hang on, the themes that I'm trying to hit with these people across it, with Shane with finding purpose after some mental health battles, Will with his post-service police service and his cancer treatment, and then it was like, hang on, we've got a topic and a theme that we can unpack with what you're doing now, and then timeline continues. You're now my advocate.
Yeah, and I consider it. I consider it a real honour and a privilege, to be honest, to be able to help guys out because a lot of ADF members, they don't engage in this process until the wheels have pretty much come off, which is what I'm really trying to change. I'm doing my best to educate that this process needs to start early in your career. People are not going to be combat effective. They're not going to be the best version of themselves in the ADF if they're hiding injuries because they haven't been to the med centre. And, I'm glad that ADF's really changed its tunes in the way that it goes about this now. People who are serving, like, if there's people who are still in now, my hot tip is go to the med centre, get those injuries looked at, because we're not lizards, right? Like your joints aren't going to grow back. They're not going to get better unless you take active measures for rehabilitation. And by engaging in that process, you're already building the body of evidence that's going to be required for DVA to be able to make that tick off for your injuries. So you're kind of having two wins by doing by doing the one thing.
Talk us through the claims and your understanding, down and dirty, so people understand what's going on.
Yeah, cool. All right, so this is the down and dirty. Essentially, the whole claims process is made up of two major areas. The first area is called initial liability, and that's proving that you've got the injury and that it was service related. And the way that we do that is that we go through your med docs. We also do a long consult with the veteran, so tip to toe, like from literally we go through them head to toe to make sure that absolutely everything that has been injured through their service is notated down. through the med docs, we work out what evidence that they've got, and then whatever is missing, there's a lot of workarounds that we can do. So if you're not serving, and let's say because of that culture that we had where people wouldn't go to the med centre, there's some claimant reports and there's workarounds. So it's definitely not the end of the road. But if you are serving, you can really shape your future. And that's what I'm saying. Like, when guys start getting some injuries, they can start feeling a bit lost, and they might see the writing on the wall, and that can start triggering some really significant mental health issues. Because you got to understand, like, the volume of commitment that people have when they serve the nation. Like, civilians really don't understand it, and they think a lot of it's tied back to maybe deployments, but it's really not. Like, when you're uplifting your family every year or every 2 years, if you've got kids, if your spouse might be struggling, you're away all the time, she's having to run the home front, that can really cause a lot of issues to the member and to their family, and that can raise a lot of mental health issues if they're not dealt with. The initial liability process, we get that all submitted in that. The paperwork, the claims go in through to DVA, and then you got the bit of the long wait, right, to get assigned a DVA delegate, which is a case manager.
Yeah, and that's what typically takes the most time. And historic for people that understand, the frustrations around that wait. That's where the wait is. You've put your claim in for liability assessment, and that's what takes the longest.
And that can take, like that wait, it can be over 12 months sometimes. In saying that, I had a guy that I submitted claims for in like late December, and by middle of February, he already had a delegate, and he's already all the way through his initial liability process. We're just waiting on the determination now. So what I've worked out is, guys will wait a long time to get assigned a delegate. You then get the paperwork from DVA, which says, yep, we want you, depending on which conditions you're applying for. The general rule of thumb is that you'll have an initial appointment with a general practitioner where they go through the paperwork. They'll refer you off to some medical imaging for scans of your joints. You get the medical imaging done. You then have a second appointment with your GP. They finalise the paperwork. That gets sent off to DVA. At that same time, if you've got any claims for hearing loss, you have an audiologist report. And if there's any mental health claims that have been put in, that's when the psych reports will get done as well. What I've worked out is that there's a massive discrepancy in the competence of general practitioners, and that's been a major pain point in this process. So I've actually engaged with a group called Front Foot Health, and that's run by an ex-RAF aviator who became a general practitioner, and he's got a team of GPs, and there's a bunch of them who are ex-ADF, and all they do is DVA claims, and they have been absolutely phenomenal to deal with, to be honest. So I've got that pipeline through them. I also, for the psych stuff, I use MediLinks. They're another veteran-run organisation. They provide a phenomenal service. Their reports are really good. They're detailed. And the main thing that both of those two different organisations do is they convey the information from the veteran to DVA. So that might sound like, well, duh, that's their job, right? But I've had a lot of problems with a number of civilian GPs where they just don't understand ADF personnel. So when you've got, let's say, like a 24-year-old man or woman, and they're going through their claims process, and they're there at the GP, and they've got significant injuries, they don't see that kind of stuff in the civilian sector. You don't get the injuries in a civilian job like you can get in the ADF because of the work that we do. What I found is that we've worked really hard. So we've worked really hard to remove those pain points, because my whole goal of my business is to take the stress out of the DVA claims process for the veteran. And we do that by providing essentially like unparalleled support. And it really is 24/7 support. I say that to all my clients. If they wake up, it's 2 a.m, they're ruminating on something, they just can't, something's going on. Oh, something about my knee or my back. They can text me, they can call me, and that is one of the critical things that we do. And, we don't cherry pick. I don't care what the injury is. If the veteran comes to me and says, hey, Cowboy, this has happened to me through my service, we'll talk it out and we'll come up with a game plan on how we're going to attack it. And that has been a bit of a bugbear for, because I take clients on at all stages. I've got guys who come on at the start. I've got guys who've come on like you who are more towards the end and are concerned about going through the doctor's appointments. And that's the thing with some of these reports that the doctors have to fill out. they can be quite nuanced, and what you think that DVA is asking and what they're really asking are two different things. So with impairment points is something that people always ask about. So there's three main acts that people can come under, right? So you've got DIRCA, VEA, and MERCA, right? So a lot of these guys here, they'll either come under VEA or MERCA, because MERCA started off and halfway through 2004. And, as much as there's been a significant issues that have been raised through the Royal Commission on Veteran Suicide, MERCA is probably one of the best military rehabilitation and compensation acts really around the world. Like, not saying that it's perfect, but it's much better than anything else that I've ever come across, especially dealing, like I've done a lot with talking with Americans, and theirs is absolutely woeful. But in saying that, it's really exciting to see that there's proactive work getting done to improve those acts for the veterans.
Man, that's like for you to have pretty much not in your infancy, but for where you like talking about that passion before and how you've managed to turn, a frustration of yours that you experienced through your own claims into advocating others. Like it's in your title.
Yeah, and you know what I've realised and what's become really apparent to me, because I went through a lot of mental health struggles. Like, I was in a bad way for a very long time. I was abusing alcohol. I was using alcohol was the solution to all my problems, and I realised that I wasn't responsible for the trauma that I've been through, but I was responsible for the way that I responded to the said trauma, right? And that's something that's come really apparent to me now, dealing with veterans every day, is that veterans essentially come into two main classes to me. You got the guys who have gone through some really bad stuff in the military. They ruminate on it. They hate DVA. They might have hated their last unit, and they're stuck in that loop. And then you've got this whole other class of guys who have gone through very similar trauma, but instead of letting it become an anchor, they use as fuel to accelerate the next chapter of their life. And that's what I really want to achieve out of this business. I want to normalize veterans leaving defence and then going out in the community and absolutely crushing it and being that value add to the community, so people don't go, all veterans are just broken and they just sit around on their pensions. No, well, that's not true at all. Like, problems that I was going through were my making. And once I realised that, I went, but if I've made it, I can change it. And then I realised that path to redemption has always been in front of me, like, the whole time.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And we've spoken about this for hours prior, and we just had to get it on camera so that we could, what's the word, not future proof, but like we could protect these conversations as well.
Yeah, and it's really important that this gets out to the wider veteran community. So hot tips are, if you're still serving, you can shape your entire future by ensuring that if you do have injuries, get to the RAP or the unit medical centre, whatever they call it, wherever you work, get your injuries looked at. It doesn't mean you're going to get downgraded, but if you've got a back problem, you can go see your doc. They can go do some imaging. They can work out what's going on. Whether you want to pursue treatment or whatever, that's completely up to you. But it starts building that body of evidence, right? And it starts that pathway to rehabilitation. And because, like I was saying, if you've got the evidence in your med docs, it's 99% of the way there. If you've left defence and you don't have the evidence in your med docs, that's fine. There's a lot of different ways to work around it. When you are engaging with an advocate, be brutal. Ask them what they're going to do for you. Are they going to actually help you fill out the forms? Are they going to go through the forms with you and coach you to make sure that you understand what you're answering before you go into these doctor's appointments? That is like a bare minimum in some of the service that these advocates should be providing. And if they're not providing, ask them why. And if they just don't have the time or whatever, okay, cool. Well, then that's not the person for you. When you get out of the Defence Force, one of the big issues that I had is I thought I'd hit peak performance, as we talked about. Like, I was jumping out of planes. I was trusted with like incredible levels of trust and responsibility with the roles that I was doing. And when I got out, I thought, oh, that was it. I'd hit peak performance in my life. And one day I had an epiphany and I realised, I've hit peak performance for that chapter of my life. And that chapter of my life was required so that I could then do what I'm doing now. And that's what I want veterans to really understand for themselves. Learn what you can out of defence, have a great time. When it's your time to leave defence, it's not the end of the game. It's the start of it, realistically.
Let's go!
Chris sent me an email a few weeks ago, found out about it, and this is what has eventuated. What an absolute selfless act here. Thanks heaps, mate. Appreciate it. Cheers, legend. So we thought Super Dupers were good. Look at that. Shit. Mate.